Hey guys, Jason Hitchings here with Adept Defense. Welcome back. Today I've got a Sig P365 for review. This was provided to us by Retro Firearms of Petoskey, Michigan, and they got it through Davidson's Gallery of Guns. So it's got the lifetime warranty on it, and this is the newer version that's supposed to have all the bugs worked out of it, and it's supposed to be good to go. So I'm sure if you followed this gun at all since its release, it had a pretty rocky start. There were some pretty big gun reviewers and YouTube channels that had quite a few problems with this gun with the early launch. You know, Military Arms Channel is one of them that he broke several of these in a row, kept sending it back, getting new ones, breaking it, sending it back. He's got several videos on that. I believe the main issues was it had a lot of striker drag when it first came out, and then the tips of the striker was breaking off, and then there were some internal springs that were breaking. And I believe on his, when he had an internal spring break, you could fire the gun, but it had to be held upside down to fire. If it was right side up, it would not fire with that broken spring in there. So just kind of some weird things that they had to iron out at the beginning of the launch with this gun, which is fairly common. Once a company launches a brand new gun, there's usually some bugs that have to get worked out, and there was kind of some controversy and some drama with how Sig handled it. A lot of people thought they didn't handle it very well. But this is the new version, and all those bugs are supposed to be worked out, and these are supposed to be good to go. So we're gonna put some rounds through it, and I'll tell you what I think. So if you're unfamiliar with the P365, after we shoot it today, we're gonna take it back to Adept Defense and kind of do a tabletop overview. Most people are pretty familiar with this gun because it's been out for a while now. And the impressive thing about this gun is it takes double stack. It's a 9mm subcompact. It takes double stack mags that are 10 rounds. So it comes with a little flush fit mag, and then it comes with another 10 rounder that has a little bit of a pinky extension on it. So this gun is tiny. If you've never handled one before, I mean, just holding it up to the palm of my hand, you can kind of see how small this gun is. It's actually smaller than most of the single stack subcompact guns that I have, which that's the impressive part about this, is it's such a small gun, but yet it still has double stack 10 round magazines. So we're gonna load it up here, put some rounds through it, and see how it does. Alright, so it's definitely a small, snappy gun, which you would expect from a gun this small. There's just not a ton of real estate to get a really good, firm grip on this gun. For my hand size, this gun's a bit small, so it's a little bit snappy to shoot, which you'd expect. I've got two pieces of steel behind the camera set up. I've got a silhouette target and then a small round piece of steel set up about 20 yards away. And I had to kind of play with that small piece of steel to figure out where exactly to hold the sights with this gun. But it does come with a nice set of sights, as you can see here. It's got metal night sights on it. It does have tritium vials in the rear and in the front, and in the front it has a green ring around that front tritium vial. So they're pretty quick to pick these sights up. It's a square notched rear that is serrated, so that helps cut down on the glare on that rear sight. So this gun does come with a really nice set of sights right from the factory. and that rear sight actually does have a 90-degree ledge on the front of it to where you would be able to do a one-handed manipulation if you needed to. So that's one big plus for this gun, is it does come with nice sights on it, which is, you know, something that's not real common on defensive guns these days. It seems like no matter what brand I buy, I end up changing the sights, but this is a gun that I wouldn't have to change the sights on. I do like them. Alright, I got the 2 mags loaded back up. Let's put some more rounds through this and get a better feel for it. One thing to note, I am actually using a magazine loader, which is something I don't normally do, but that 10th round is really tight going into these mags. They'll probably loosen up a little bit over time, but just something to note, getting that last round in these mags is pretty tough. Alright, so performing a reload on this gun, it's a little bit tricky just because the grip of the gun is so short that your hand kind of gets in the way. You got to break your grip to get that magazine to drop free out of the gun when you get a button press on that mag release. So you kind of got to get out of its way for it to drop free, and then to get that new magazine seated. The grip on this gun is so small. It's definitely a smaller gun than what I'm used to shooting. Usually a Glock 19 sized, you know, what they would consider a compact type gun, is about as small as I normally shoot. And then the duty size gun, or the Glock 17 type, is, you know, usually the type of gun that I shoot the most. So this is definitely a smaller gun than what I'm used to running, so it just takes a little bit of getting used to with manipulating a gun this small with that short of a grip. The recoil is pretty manageable for as small as this gun is. One thing I'm noticing I'm not a huge fan of is it doesn't have a whole lot of real estate on the side of this frame here for my support hand thumb, because normally I would put a little bit of down pressure on the side of the frame here with my support hand thumb, but it's so thin in this area that I don't have much to get a hold of in that area. So I normally like to try to get as forward on the gun as possible to control that recoil, and I just don't have a lot out there to get a hold of. So it makes this gun probably feel a little bit snappier than if I did have an index point for my thumb there to get a little bit of pressure on the front of the gun. But it is a 9mm, so the recoil impulse isn't that bad, but it's definitely noticeably snappier than some of the single stack subcompact guns that I have, such as the Shield or the 43X. I feel like their recoil impulse is a little bit easier to control than this one. This one has a little bit more muzzle snap to it. Alright, so one thing that I should probably note is, I told you it comes with 2 10-round mags, but SIG does have 12-round mags available for this gun. So for me and my hand size and the size grip that I prefer, I would like to have a little bit longer grip on this gun, so that 12-round mag would give me that. So if you do pick up one of these guns, know that those 12-round mags are available, and that will give you a little bit better purchase on the gun, plus it'll add 2 more rounds to your capacity. So that was definitely a nice thing that SIG came out with. So let's put a few more rounds through this. We're going to go back to that small plate down there. Alright, so kind of notice the recoil impulse. I don't really have any place, like I said, to put a lot of downward pressure with my support hand thumb, but just being able to ride it kind of in this groove of the frame, I feel like that is helping a little bit. Alright, so I wanted to change the camera angle so you guys could kind of get a side view of this gun and see what the recoil impulse looks like when I shoot it. You'll see that it is a little bit snappier, but it is still controllable. So I just wanted to give you guys a little bit different, or a better angle anyway, to be able to see this gun recoil. So definitely manageable. It's not a bad recoil impulse. It just has that little bit of a snap that you would expect from a subcompact gun this size, but it's still very shootable. So another thing I'm noticing the more rounds I put through this gun is the trigger. So when I first handled this gun in the store, I wasn't very impressed by the trigger. And then I brought it home and I put it on my trigger pull gauge just to see what it was. And it was right at 6 pounds. That's a little bit heavier than what I would like with a, you know, little tiny subcompact gun with this. I'd love to get it down around that, you know, 4.5 to 5 pound mark. So I would like to cut a pound off this trigger, and I think it would be better. There would be less chance of moving your sight alignment as you go through your trigger press. But another thing I noticed with the trigger was it had the normal amount of take up that you would expect, but then once you got it back to the wall, I had to pull through almost 2 distinct steps of creep before it would break. And I think that's starting to smooth out a little bit. You can kind of see it has the normal amount of take up. Then when you prep it back to the wall and pull a little further, it's got a little bit of creep, and then it breaks. So about half of the creep it had right out of the box is kind of smoothed out on it. So I would guess the more rounds you put through this gun and the more dry practice you do with this gun, I bet the trigger will get better and better with it. So that's just kind of something I wanted to mention. The more I shoot it, the more I notice this trigger is improving. So let's load it back up and keep shooting. Alright, so another thing that I've noticed on this gun that I definitely like is the way they milled the slide serrations in there. They've got really defined edges on those front serrations and on the rear serrations. They're just as aggressive on the front as they are on the rear of the slide, which there's a lot of companies that are starting to put forward serrations on their gun, but they seem like they're not as aggressive as they should be. So these have pretty decent edges to the serrations to where they're actually really usable. If I wanted to manipulate the gun forward of the ejection port, which there isn't a whole lot of real estate on a small gun like this, but definitely for press checking purposes, when I do my admin load, when I start my day, I can press check it to know that I have a round in the chamber, know the condition of the gun. It's just definitely a helpful feature, and I'm a fan of them. Alright, so one other thing to point out on this gun is this particular model does have the manual thumb safety on it. And as you can see, it's on both sides of the gun, so it is ambi, which is nice. And then it does have a very positive click going both ways with the safety, which I like. I'm not a huge fan of manual thumb safeties on carry guns. I normally opt for the versions without the safety. But if this is going to be say it's a women's carry gun and it finds its way in off-body carry, such as a purse or a bag or something like that, you know, it really should be in a proper holster that covers the trigger guard. But a manual thumb safety is not a bad idea in one of those situations. So the location of the thumb safety is pretty decent. I'm able to actuate it with my thumb, no problem, to be able to sweep that safety off when I need to. I haven't really been using the safety today when I've been shooting it. I've just been keeping it in the off position. But another thing to notice or to note about the safety is it does actually disable the trigger to where you come up against a hard wall, which I like. I've seen guns that when the safety's on, you just have a dead trigger and it pulls all the way back, and I don't really like that because I've seen people in class that have those guns and they'll, you know, inadvertently put their safety on when they didn't mean to, and they'll draw out and their gun doesn't work and they just have this dead trigger, and it takes them, you know, sometimes a few seconds to figure out why their gun didn't work. So this one, you know, if it has a hard trigger, the safety's on, and then you can sweep that safety off and then it'll break at the wall. So I like the way the safety works internally versus some of the other manufacturers. Alright, so I've loaded the gun back up. Safety is on right now. I'm going to try to get a couple reps in with using that safety, starting from a high compressed ready with the safety engaged, press out, disengage that safety, and get a round on target. Reactivate that safety. Alright, so something to note for me and my hand size, the ergonomics of this gun, the placement of the safety, it's a little bit of a reach for me. I have to kind of bring my hand back and break my master grip to get that safety on. It's not quite as a good of a safety location as like a 1911 is. I feel like the safety on those guns is exactly where you want them to be. This one I have to kind of reach back and kind of break that master grip on the rear strap of the gun to be able to activate that safety. I can sweep the safety off easier than I can sweep it back on, which for a defensive carry gun is probably the best situation. As long as I can defeat that safety quickly and easily and get rounds on target, that's a better situation than being hard to defeat the safety. Alright, so another thing to point out with the ergonomics of this gun, the slide stop slide release is a little bit farther forward on the gun than what is ideal for me and my hand size. So somebody who has smaller hand size than me is going to have a hard time activating that lever without breaking their firing hand grip. So when they perform a reload, they're going to either have to come over the top to power stroke the gun or use their support hand to activate that slide stop slide release button. So let's put a couple more rounds through it. Alright, so after the first 100 rounds, kind of here's my thoughts on this gun. I think it definitely has a place in the market. It's that really small, subcompact 9mm defensive carry gun, and that's exactly what it was marketed to be. But for me, there were some definite things I didn't like about the gun. The ergonomics, I wasn't a real big fan of. The safety selector, I didn't really like the way that was done. It was really positive to click it on and click it off, so that part of it was fine, but the placement I didn't think was very well executed. Same with the placement of the slide stop slide release. I think that should be back a little bit further on the gun to make it a little bit more usable for, you know, all hand sizes. It was just kind of on the edge of my reach right there to where it was usable. It just wasn't as ideal as it could be. The trigger's decent in this gun. The sights are really good, the serrations are really good. It's impressive that they have 10-round double stack magazines with as small as this gun is. So it's definitely a nice deep concealment type gun. It's probably not a gun that I would purchase. It's just too small for my liking. And quite frankly, I can conceal bigger guns than this that have higher capacity, a little better ergonomics for me, better for me to control recoil and have a better recoil impulse than a little snappier gun like this. So for me, the only place that this gun would really fit in with the style that I carry would be possibly a backup gun in an ankle holster. It's a great size for that. This is probably small enough you could pocket carry it. It might be a good, you know, in northern Michigan where we live, it's cold and snowy 6 months out of the year, so to have a pocket holster and to carry this in a jacket pocket if you're going to be outside for a period of time, I would probably rather have something like this than like a J-frame revolver, because this holds, you know, twice the capacity that does in roughly the same size, and you can still pocket carry this. So for that, or for a real deep concealment, you know, non-permissive environments type situation, I could see this gun could have its place. But for an everyday carry, it's a little smaller than what I'd like, but I can see it definitely has a lot of calling in the market. There's a lot of people that have purchased this gun and carry it every day. I'm part of a few different Facebook groups, you know, gun related groups, and a lot of people EDC this gun every single day. So it definitely has a big following out there, so I felt like it deserved, you know, some time on this channel and a look at this gun, but I wanted them to fix all the issues first. So now that they've fixed all the issues with this gun, I'm a little more comfortable to recommend it at that point. So we're going to head back to Adept Defense now, and kind of do a tabletop look at this gun, kind of show you more of the features, the size comparison. I'll compare it with my Shield 2.0, which is a single stack. That's probably the closest thing I have to be similar size as this. I also have the 43X, which is, you know, quite a bit different in grip length, but we can take a look at that too. We'll put it on the trigger pull gauge and see if that trigger pull has actually improved like I think it has. And I'll show you guys what comes in the box. So let's head back and do that now. Alright, now we'll do the tabletop overview, and then I plan on taking this gun to the upcoming Adept Defense class, and we'll see if we can talk one of the students into putting a few magazines through it and giving us his feedback on the gun as well. So stay tuned for that part after the tabletop overview. So let's jump right into what comes with this gun. So as you'd probably expect, it comes in a hard plastic pistol case. If we open this up, we've got our SIG user's manual, a sticker, and then some of the various packaging along with your cable lock and your chamber flag down here. Of course, we've got the 365 and then a spare magazine. So if we talk about the magazines first here, as I mentioned before at the range, these are 10 round double stack magazines, metal construction, which I like. I really like metal magazines a lot because they seem to drop free and eject from the gun the best. These mags are definitely tight to get that 10th round in them. I was using a mag loader at the range just to kind of make my life a little bit easier, but normally I don't need to use a mag loader, but getting that last round into these mags is definitely tight. One of the mags has a flush fitting floor plate on it, and then the other one has a little bit of that built-in pinky extension. So jumping back into the pistol, I've got a cleared out gun here. I thought we would do some trigger measurements. As I talked about on the range there, I initially measured this trigger right out of the box before this gun was shot, and it was right at 6 pounds. But the more I shot this gun, I kind of felt like the trigger was getting better the more I shot it. And just after 100 or 120 rounds total now through this gun, the trigger does feel noticeably better. So let's put it on the gauge and see what it's at now. Alright, that was 5 pounds, 4.0 ounces. £5 pounds, 2.4 ounces. I always like to do 3 pulls to kind of give an average. Every once in a while you get one that's a little heavier or a little light compared to the norm. But these seem to be really consistent. 5 pounds, 4.1 ounces, which gives us a 3-pull average of 5 pounds, 3.5 ounces. So I mean, the trigger pull has almost been reduced by almost a pound, which is definitely what I wanted to see with this gun. When I first pulled it out of the box, it definitely had a heavier trigger than I wanted. It wasn't a bad trigger. It has a little bit of creep before the trigger breaks, but the pull weight was just a little bit heavier to get through that wall than what I wanted with a small gun of this size. So I was kind of hoping it would be more around that 5 pound mark, and that's exactly what it's coming to. Now for a quick size comparison, the gun that I have that's probably the closest to this as far as size goes anyway would be my M&P Shield 9mm 2.0. So if I put the flush fit magazine in both of these guns and line up the back of them, you can see that the 365 is noticeably shorter on grip length. And one thing to note there is the SIG has a 10+1 capacity. The flush fit magazine that's in the 2.0 Shield here is a 7+1 capacity. So a smaller size and grip length, but an increased capacity. So you know, that speaks a lot to how SIG designed this gun. They did a really nice job fitting the maximum capacity into this gun. So I've got these guns lined up on the back side of the slide, and you can notice a little bit of a difference in slide length, or overall length of the slide of the gun there. The SIG is a little bit shorter, just enough to really notice. Probably wouldn't be super noticeable carrying this gun. The dimensions are pretty similar on these, but like I mentioned before on the range, if you were going to use the SIG as a backup gun roll, the shorter grip length would actually really work to your advantage in that type of scenario. Alright, that was a quick tabletop overview of this gun. I wanted to get a size comparison between this and the M&P Shield, and then I also wanted to recheck that trigger as far as pull weight and get an actual 3-pull measurement. It's pretty impressive that the pull weight has dropped that much just in 100 rounds of shooting, so who knows, maybe after 500 rounds that little bit of creep that the trigger has before it breaks right at the wall might work itself out. So now we're going to take this gun to the upcoming Adept Defense class and see if we can talk one of the students into putting some rounds through it. Alright guys, we're on the range today at the Charlevoix Rod and Gun Club, just prepping to get ready for an Adept Defense carbine pistol class. But before class starts, I thought I would have one of my students, Chris, here, put a couple mags through the 365 and get his thoughts on it. Chris has taken 6 classes with Adept Defense so far, so after class today it'll be 7 classes with me. So we're going to get eyes and ears on, load this thing up, and have him put a couple mags through it. Alright, go ahead whenever you're ready.
Is way snappier.
Yeah, the recoil impulse is definitely snappier than probably anything that you're used to shooting.
Right. It does seem to settle back on target pretty well.
Right. Yeah, I think the recoil is manageable, but you definitely feel the difference with the smaller, lighter weight gun, you know, attributing to that snappiness with the recoil impulse. Any other thoughts on it?
Being a smaller framed handgun, it is more difficult to get a good purchase on it.
Right.
And for me, from what I'm used to shooting, get proper grip pressure on the front of the gun.
Right.
But it's manageable.
Yeah, that was kind of my thoughts. For me, it's too small. It's just physically too small of a gun for me to shoot well and enjoy bringing it out to shoot it a lot. It would serve a purpose as a concealed carry gun. I mean, you can shoot it well when you have to, but it's probably not your go-to if you're going to hit the range for a day of shooting, not what you're going to grab.
Right. Even after just the 2 mags, I can feel it in here more.
Yes.
Whether it's because it's thinner, or just a smaller grip that I'm not used to. You can feel it in that meat of your thumb a little bit more.
Right. Now, a gun like this, obviously it was designed and built for concealed carry, but what purpose, if you were going to buy this gun, what purpose or what role do you think it would serve?
I would probably, if I was going to buy this gun, I would probably buy it with the thought of putting it on an ankle rig and using it as a backup gun. It would not be my primary carry weapon unless I was in an area where I needed to deep conceal.
Right.
Maybe.
Yeah, those were exactly what I said. I didn't tell him to say that. That was that was his own thoughts. But that's exactly what I said. I shot it yesterday, and I said it's too small for me to be a primary carry gun, but for a non-permissive environments type of gun, a super deep concealment, or a backup possibly in an ankle rig. That's exactly what I said yesterday. So, anything else? Or
it would be a gun if it, like we had talked a little bit, it's kind of like a 40.
Right.
It has a snappiness of a 40.
Yes.
But it's not unmanageable. I might, let my wife try that. Just the mental aspect. It's a smaller gun. It's going to be easier, and it is better than, like, I have a Kel-Tec PF9.
Right.
And it's way worse than this, I guess you'd say, for recoil and purchase. And that.
Yeah, I could see that. This would probably serve well as a women's carry gun. Easy to conceal for more form-fitting attire and the way most women dress. You know, you wouldn't necessarily have to dress around this gun as much as possibly a bigger double stack gun. You know, for this being double stack, it's the size of a small subcompact single stack. Right.
Yeah, for me personally, I think it has a place.
Right.
Just maybe not with me.
Exactly, exactly. So Chris pretty much mirrored my thoughts exactly. If you guys are interested in putting your hands on this gun, stop in at Retro Firearms in Petoskey, Michigan. I'm Jason Hitchings with Adept Defense. Seek training, become adept.